turn the camera off. But anyway, just know, everybody, I love you. I certainly do. There's a lot of good people in this world. And that's what charges me up, keeps me going. All the good people in this world. Ta-da! That was the video. And I just want to say that we just went live on YouTube. Say hi to everybody around the world. Welcome to New York City. All right, so we're going to put that right there. See, we don't want to block your view. Nope, we don't want to do that. And I want to get a shot on this. So many cameras, you know, I'm a YouTuber. I got to film everything I do. We're pretty much going to do that same shot again, but with this camera. Okay, here we go. Let's see. All right, it's time. How we all feeling? Thank you all so much for being here. Woo! Okay, I'm going to hand this off to somebody else. Okay, I'm going to start with a little warm-up. Thank you all so much for being here. This really means the world to me. I never thought this would be possible when I started a YouTube channel about 6 years ago. This was the goal. But I never thought it would actually happen, where I'd say, hey, I'm coming to this city, and maybe you can come listen to my stories, and here you all are. So this is absolutely a dream come true, and it was fun to chat with some of you before the event started and get to know your story. I got to meet Sal yesterday. Pizza Tripe took me out for some of the best pizza in New York City, which was very cool, it's just a privilege. And we're here at Priority Bicycles in New York City. And you've heard a lot about Priority Bicycles, right, on my channel. And they have been absolutely wonderful, I don't even know what the word is, family, team members, partners. I'm not a sponsored athlete, but I love these guys like they're family. And they have taken good care of me. And they give me the freedom to design bicycles. And that's how the 600X came about. With our good friend Eddie back there. Hi, Eddie! So there's a few people here who said they have the 600X, right? Eddie is the brainchild behind the 600X, so say thanks to him as well. We collaborated on that together, and that also is a dream project. I'm gonna make sure this is a little bit more, there we go. Remember, we're live here. Let's see. Is that better? People, hi everybody. And I thought I would start by saying how I met Priority. People wonder, like, how did you get teamed up with this bike brand in New York City? You're a Boulder guy. How did this all happen? And so in 2016, I was invited to a press trip. And a press trip is where PR agencies invite journalists to go cover some new product or some new hotel or something around the world. And back in my day of being like a travel journalist when I worked for the Travel Channel, I got invited on these things a lot of times. And there was one PR company I worked with called Diamond PR, and they took me around the world, and it was exciting. And they always knew that I loved bikes, because whenever I went and did these, travel trips with them, I'd be like, hey, can I rent a bike and make a video about biking? And I once did it in Aruba. I rode a bike all the way around Aruba.
This is on point. I'm making a Chakrabarty.
Phone is talking to you. What is this? And so they invited me to this press trip in Minneapolis, which is a great city, but I'm not sure it's such a great city in February. And so they're like, Ryan, we know you love bikes. We're doing this press trip in Minneapolis. You'll get it. You'll get it. Don't worry. Nobody's looking at you. It's all good. And I was like, I don't know if I want to. Here, want me to figure that out? It's okay. They said, come to Minneapolis in February, and we're working with this bike company, and they're releasing this new bicycle. And I was like, man, I don't know if I want to go to Minneapolis in February. That sounds kind of cold and horrible. But at the last minute, I said yes to the press trip. And I went out there, and I immediately met Dave and Connor. And we connected like brothers. These guys, Dave and Connor, you probably met them when you walked in. Dave and Connor have been in a lot of my videos. They're the founders of this wonderful company. And we kind of connected like we were brothers. We're the same age, we like the same things, and we rode these bikes, the Continuum. Does anybody have a Continuum? It's a cool bike. We rode the Continuum. It was one of their newer bikes at the time, and we rode it on Lake Calhoun over ice. They put snow tires on these bikes, and we had this fun little adventure for a couple days, and we came away as very good friends, and I'm so grateful that I went on that press trip. And when I left the trip, they're like, hey Ryan, we'll send you one of these Continuums and you can make a video about it on your YouTube channel. And I was like, okay. And that's the very first priority video I ever made, was about the Continuum. You might remember it if you're an old school fan. And that's how it all came to be. And from that point on, they would send me their bikes and I would test them and try them out. The next bike in the line was the 600, and I loved that bike and made a video about that. And that's essentially how it started and how I built up this partnership. And I'm forever grateful. And I'd like to call out, so we have Connor here, we have Dave there, we have Lauren in the back. You may have met Lauren also, has been with Priority since the very early days. I see Nelson back there. Hi, Nelson. Has anybody called Nelson with a broken bike issue? Because you're going to be talking, okay, yeah, you know, yeah. Nelson's the guy that you've talked to. We've got Benjamin right next to him. Benjamin, hi there, buddy. Eddie's back there. Are there any more employees? Okay, there are more, but not here right now. Oh, Greg. Oh, there's Greg right there. Right on. Greg does all the social media. Yeah. So if you follow Priority on Instagram or anything else, that's all Greg behind that, which is very cool.
Don't give the secret away.
Oh, sorry. Greg's a good guy. How's everybody doing out there? Hi. So I want to make this kind of casual and informal. You know, a lot of you have probably watched my videos, so you know a lot of the stories, and so I want to open this up to questions. But I'll start off with a couple stories to get things fired up, and then we can ask questions. How's that sound? And don't be shy. Please ask questions. It's fun. That's the best part of these talks, and we'll just get started that way. So, how did I get started as a biker and a bike packer? And this is a story that I haven't really shared yet in a video. But when I was 5 years old, I was diagnosed with very high blood pressure. And I'll never forget it. But the nurses came in and they checked it, and it was 160 over 140 at 5 years old, which is nuts. That's super high. And then they're like, no, that can't be. No kids have blood pressure that high. Then they bring somebody else in, check it, like, oh yeah, it's 160 over 140. And so as a young boy, I went through lots of tests and in and out of the hospital, and they never quite figured out what was causing my high blood pressure. But I remember many doctors saying, the best way to combat this issue is to have a strong heart. So he's like, you need to run. Kind of like a Forrest Gump moment, you know? And I was like, okay. And so from that moment on, I started running. I was a weird elementary school kid that would wake up before school and go running. Because I took it really seriously. It's like, I don't want to die, I want to have a strong heart, you know? And that's how I essentially got into being like an endurance athlete at a very young age. And I started cycling as well. And so that has motivated me throughout my whole life. And then of course, as we all know, once you start biking or running, it feels good. You feel better about yourself. You feel more alive. You feel vibrant. And I just stuck with it and I loved it. And I got a little bit competitive. You know, I was fairly fast when I was young. I had dreams of going to the Olympics. I ran track in Colorado in the summers and then in high school. But I always rode a bike. But at that point, cycling for me was just commuting. I had never been on a long bike ride or any type of adventure. For me, cycling was just a way to get around town. And I remember watching an Earth Day special when I was very young about saving the planet. This must have been some of the first media about Earth Day and what humans were doing to the planet. And as a little boy, I was really impacted by the message and what we were doing to precious Mother Earth. And at that moment, I said, I am never going to drive a car. I'm going to ride my bike every day. Because in my mind, that was the best way to keep this planet clean. Because in my mind, cars were bad. I mean, everybody here probably has a car that is a driven car, so I'm not a car hater. But at that moment, I'm like, I'm going to ride my bike everywhere I go. And so I just started riding everywhere. To school, to soccer practice, to all the things that a little boy would do. And I remember going on a long bike ride once with my friend Paul. And my mom would always warn me about Paul because Paul was kind of a troublemaker. And Paul took me down this highway to go mountain biking, which was like 25 miles away. And it was the first feeling of absolute freedom. I went further than the confines of my neighborhood. Because up until that point, I hadn't gone that far. But now I was like far, a place where a car would usually take me. And I was on a bike and it just felt so good, right? And I remember riding back with him and being starving, because when you burn that many calories, you get so hungry. I remember we stopped at an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I ate everything, and it felt so good. And then I went home, and I remember my mom was so pissed off at my friend Paul. She's like, "Don't you ever take my son on a ride like that ever again, especially not on the highway." And that was my first taste of like long travel on a bike. And then, throughout high school, when all my friends turned 16, I decided I don't want to drive. I'm sticking to this whole environmental, protest where I'm going to ride my bike everywhere. And in Boulder, Colorado, most kids have quite a bit of money, and they all got cars when they were 16. And I was like, I'm just going to ride my bike. Not only because I love my bike, because I was raised by a single mom, and she didn't have money to buy us cars. It wasn't even an option for me. And I just kept riding and riding. And I remember riding to school, the freezing cold, the winter mornings, and my friends would drive past me in their cars and honk at me, and it'd be like, "Sucker!" But they thought that it wasn't fun, but it was fun for me. I was on my bike and it felt alive. We can all relate to that, right? It feels good, even when it's freezing cold, to ride your bike or just to be outside. And fast forward till today, and a million adventures in between, I still have never owned a car in my life. I ride my bike everywhere I go. The number one question I get from people is, how do you go on dates? And the answer is, I put women on the handlebars. They love it. Or tandem. Who here's been on a tandem date? Yeah, you guys were talking about it earlier. Tandem dates are the best dates, right? And then I graduated from from college, and decided that I didn't want to get a job in the real world. I got a degree in broadcast journalism, and I was trained to be like a local news anchor, which was fun and exciting, but that's not what I wanted to do. I always had a piece of, wanting to make the world a better place. And I decided to join the Peace Corps. And so I went down to Honduras for 2.5 years, and I worked with kids. And those 2 years were some of the most challenging yet rewarding years of my life. I absolutely loved it, even though it was very hard. And as we all know, the hardest things in life usually reap the greatest rewards. And on a daily basis, this would happen. I lived in a small village in the western side of Honduras, in a stucco house that sometimes had running water, sometimes had electricity. It was a totally different world from Boulder, Colorado, which is who's been to Boulder? Anybody been to Boulder? Okay, so a lot of you have been to Boulder. Boulder is a very nice, affluent city. I'd never experienced anything like this. It was eye-opening to see how not only Honduras is, but to realize that that's how a lot of the world is. I'm so fortunate. And from that point on, I was like, I want to do everything I can to help people in whatever fashion that is and whatever that means. But those 2 years were extremely impactful. I worked with kids, I worked in schools, I coached girls and boys soccer teams. Because I got a degree in broadcast journalism, I started a youth news TV show, and I got cameras donated from UNICEF. You all know UNICEF, the United Nations segment that helped children around the world. You might remember on Halloween when you walk around with a little UNICEF box and you get people to put money in it, and you have a little competition at school, and that's UNICEF. So they donated some cameras to me, and we started essentially like a garage level TV show, and I taught these kids how to very basic shooting and editing skills, and they would run around all week and film stories that meant something to them. It gave them a voice in their community that they had never had. And I was working with kids that were aged 10 to 16, 17, high school. And it was really fun to see what they came up with. It was really powerful. Because kids in Honduras, they're kind of like the forgotten age. They don't get a lot of respect or attention, and they're just there's a lot of times the families have lots of kids, and they don't get the attention that they deserve. And so I was there essentially just like a big brother to all these kids, and it was the coolest job I've ever had. And so that essentially was my project in Honduras. And I decided that instead of flying home from Honduras like the rest of the Peace Corps volunteers I was with, that I would cash in my ticket, use the money to buy a bike, and I would ride home. Great idea, right? Everybody should do this. So I did that, and I told a few people at the beginning, I think I'm going to ride my bike home from Honduras. And they're like, that is stupid. That is a crazy idea. Why would you ever consider that? And then I would tell like the kids that I was working with, and they're like, yeah, you should do that. That sounds so fun. That sounds like a great adventure. Kids are always so enthusiastic about anything, right? And so, on one end, the kids in Honduras said, you should go. On the other end, my mom and her friends in the United States were like, that's crazy. But the kids in Honduras won out. And I gave away all of my stuff after the 2 years that I lived there, packed up a trailer full of camping equipment, and it will still forever be one of the most impactful days of my life that I left Honduras. Definitely one of the saddest days, because I had lived there for 2 years, and I'd become like a big brother to these children. And leaving them, almost in a way, felt wrong. Like I had tricked them, that I came there and I was this like fun-loving gringo guy, and then all of a sudden I was leaving. And it was really hard to say goodbye, because at that point I didn't know when I would be back. I didn't know if I would be able to stay in touch with these kids. This is way before social media and Facebook and all that stuff. They definitely did not have internet in Honduras at the time. And it was really sad and scary. But at the same time, it was exciting because I was getting on my bike and I was going to ride home to the United States. And I remember that morning saying goodbye to everybody, tears streaming down my face, and getting on my bike and being like, wow, this is real. This is it. Like, I'm really doing this. I've been planning it for months. Actually 2 years. And I got on that bike and I had one paper map. I didn't have any GPS, there were no cell phones, no smartphones. And I had a paper map, and I had Honduras, my little village, which was called La Esperanza, and then Boulder, Colorado. And I drew a line, on this one paper map. And I'm like, I should be able to follow that map all the way there. And it worked out. I followed that exact same route the whole way home. It worked out. Back in those days, again, I wasn't looking at a phone every day to see where I should turn left or right. I was talking to the locals, which was a great way to connect with people. And so many people the entire way home through Central America and Mexico went out of their way to help me. And I was a little scared. Most people outside of my world in Peace Corps in Honduras were like, this is crazy. Haven't you watched the news? Don't you know how dangerous Central America is and how dangerous Mexico is? And I was like, no, I think it's going to be okay. And luckily I spoke Spanish, so that definitely helped. And I slowly made my way every single day, asking people for directions. People would invite me into their homes and feed me. A lot of these villages I went through had never in their lives met a white guy, which is crazy. Mexico's a pretty touristy country, but not where I was riding my bike. And it was fascinating, and it was beautiful. And that it was there that I realized, how generous most people are. And at that time it was Mexicans, but really it's people all over the world. People want to help other people. And I would roll up on my bike and my trailer, and obviously it sparks questions because they're like, this is weird. We've never had a crazy white dude on a bike in our village before, And they would all kind of come out, and I was like the center of attention for a little bit. I got to tell my stories of what I was doing, and it was a fun cultural exchange moment. And I did that the whole way home. Never ever once felt in danger in Mexico. Quite the opposite. People would go out of their way to help me. I remember once a truck driver pulled over, ahead of me. And I'm riding up and I'm like, I hope this isn't going to be a weird situation. What's he going to do? Why did he stop on the side of the road? Why is he waving at me? But I got up to the cab and he's like, hey, there's no gas station for the next 70 kilometers. And I saw you on your bike in the middle of nowhere, and I want to give you this gallon of water. And I was like, are you kidding me? You stopped your car, your truck, just to help me. And those moments happened quite a bit. And they still happen. You've watched my videos, you see what these people do. The trail magic is a real thing. That is when I fully realized the magic of humans and trail magic. I made it home. It was so exciting. When I crested the hills coming back into Boulder, it was a beautiful December morning. I had left in September. This adventure took 3 months. I remember it was about 9 degrees. It was freezing cold. The Boulder Flatirons were lit up with the morning sun. And it was one of those moments that I'll never forget. And I came over this hill, coming into town, after being not only on the road for 3 months, but away in Honduras for 2 years. So I'd been away from home for a long time. And I rode down and I saw a group of people off to the side of the road, and some of them had flags. I'm like, who are these people? What's going on? And it was a lot of my friends and my mom and other people had come to the edge of town to greet me as I rolled into Boulder. And I went up and I hugged my mom, and I remember she was crying and I was crying, and she was like, "Don't ever do this again." And at that time I said, "I won't, Mom, I promise." You know, because it stresses her out. Of course, it stresses moms out to do something like this, because it is, you know, scary-ish. But to me, I never felt in danger. And that is essentially the story of how I got into this. That ride made me feel so alive. Nothing in my life had ever made me feel that way before. Every day was a new adventure. Every day had a different ending. I didn't know how anything was going to end up. I would just wake up, pack up my gear, get on my bike, and go. And I just trusted that everything would work out, and I trusted the people along the way. And it all worked out. And it not just worked out, but it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life up until that point. It was really special. And a lot of you have done bike tours. I talked with some of you before this. You can relate. There's a lot of magic out there. And at this time in the world, when we watch the news and everything's scary and we think that humans can be so horrible and mean and judgmental, you think back to these adventures and you're like, no, most humans are good. You know, most humans are definitely good and want to help out one another. And when I get scared, when I watch the news, when I think that there's no hope, when I think it's just dark times, I tap back into those memories. And it just fills my heart with joy knowing that, yeah, there's a lot of people on this planet. And the news can be sensational and they focus on the negative stories, but the good far outweighs the bad on this planet. Can we agree with that? Yeah, I would agree with that, right? Yeah. And so that's just like a quick story of how I got into riding my bike and that first adventure. And I'd like to open it up to questions now, because most of you know my stories. And so maybe you have some specific questions that you've always wanted to ask me, and now is your time. Do we have any questions? Here we go.
At the end of a long day when it's in the basement, how do you have so much energy to talk to everybody? I know when I travel, at the end of the day, I just want to sort of relax and
I hear you.
think about where do you get that energy?
So the question from the audience was, at the end of the day, how do you have so much energy to still talk to people? Well, it's hard sometimes, because I put out a lot of energy, not just riding my bike all day, but documenting these rides. Were you watching these videos and you see me like pushing my bike up a hill, you have to remember that I've run to the top of the hill already, placed the camera on a tripod, run all the way back, and then I get on my bike and then push it back to the top over and over and over throughout the day, or I pull out my drone. And so it's a lot of energy, not just physical, but emotional energy. And if you saw my most recent Colorado Trail adventure, you realize that was the hardest thing I've ever done. So to answer your question, people energize me. That's my favorite part of riding my bike, is connecting with other humans. That's the magic. Like when I rode home from Honduras and met people every single day. And I might be tired and I might be exhausted and I might think, oh, I don't have it in me. But I always do, and once it just takes a couple sentences and words to get fired up, I'm like, oh, this is a really cool moment, and you have a story too, because everybody's story inspires me as well, and that happens day after day after day when I'm on these bike rides. And you'll watch a lot of my videos and you'll say, Ryan meets a lot of people along the way, and I really do. My sister-in-law was watching my videos recently, and she's like, do you interview every single person you meet? And I had never realized that from the outside looking in. It's like I'm constantly sticking my camera in people's faces. And the answer is no, I don't interview everybody I meet, but I'll stop on my bike if somebody's out there, and we'll just start chatting. Oh, what's your story? What are you doing out here? Whether it's on the Colorado Trail or on a road tour like Love Cycles. And then I'll be like, hey, you're pretty interesting, and I have a YouTube channel, and I love sharing other people's stories. And I think your story would be inspirational. Would you mind if I filmed talking to you? And so that's kind of how it goes. I never just run up to anybody blindly and say, hey, how you doing? What's up? My name is Ryan. I have a YouTube channel. Let's party. I usually ask people's permission, for sure. So that's the answer to the question, is people give me energy. And I stay in touch with as many people as I can. There's a lot of people from my old touring days that I'm still in touch with, and it makes the world feel a lot smaller when you start meeting people everywhere. It is a giant planet. There's 8 billion people or whatever, but it feels a lot smaller once you travel to other countries and you make friends. Yeah.
Your videos bring so much positivity to people. And sometimes it's easy to forget what an incredible athlete you are. Because you make much of what you do look easy. You just ran the Leadville 100.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is a typical day like for you, and what is your training? How do you train for all these things that you're not videoing?
Yeah. So the question was, how do I train for the adventures that I go on? And there's 20 million people watching right now. Or maybe not quite that much. So yeah, I've always been an athletic kid. Like I said, when I was young, I started running at a very early age, and I was pretty good. And I ran a lot. I took it seriously. I really seriously wanted to be an Olympian. I never got close to that point, but I was a pretty fast runner. And so it's a mix of like muscle memory. My body has just done this for a lifetime, but also I'm always active. Like I don't have a car, so if I go anywhere, I'm on a bike. I run 5 days a week. You know, I live in Boulder, high altitude, the mountains, so I'm like running up and down hills all the time. And it's funny, I'm actually probably pretty under-trained for a lot of the things that I do. I should probably train more. But luckily, I have some good genes, and I put in the work. But I don't know if that's a very good answer to your question, but because I don't have a coach, I don't do anything like regimented. I never run with a watch. I don't like document my rides or how fast I'm going or elevation really. I only do that for like YouTube nerds who want to know like how many miles I've ridden and how the elevation. Like I've never paid attention to that until just recently. I just got my first bike computer last year. Other than that, like I would just get on my bike and ride, and I didn't know how many miles, I didn't have elevation or whatever. So it's all kind of new to me. But as far as like how I pull these giant adventures off, I'm always in pretty good shape, and I go from adventure to adventure to adventure. Yeah.
Which do you prefer, the solo trips or trips where you're with a group of friends?
Good question. Question is, do I prefer solo trips or group trips? That's a very good question, and there's a lot of value in both. I love my solo trips because I really get to just be out there and figure things out on my own. And there are moments when it's very scary and it's very lonely. A lot of people ask me, are you always so positive? Are you always bouncing off the walls? And the answer is no, I'm a human just like everybody. You know, I go through dark times and sad times and lonely times. But I do think it's really beneficial from time to time to do these alone trips and just be out there and just really just listening to my thoughts and what's going on internally and paying attention to the little things in nature. You know, I film flowers all the time. You guys notice? Like, I love that. Just taking those little moments to appreciate the delicate, beautiful little pieces of nature. And when I'm with other people, it's a lot harder to do that. Like when I ride with John and Mira or I ride with Dana, I love it, but I'm talking to them the whole day, side by side, blah, 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 which is really fun. But it's a completely different experience. And it is fun to have that shared experience when you see the sunrise or the most amazing rainbow ever, and you have this and you hug, and it's like, oh my God, are you seeing this? Because when you're alone, it's like, oh my God, I'm alone, this is cool. And luckily, I do get to share it with all of you on YouTube. And there are moments, people ask me a lot, like, does it ever get hard to always be documenting everything you're doing? And a lot of you watched Love Cycles, right? With Allie. And that was a tricky one because the whole point of that ride was to fall further in love with Allie. I had just met this wonderful woman, we fell madly in love, and in just like a month after meeting her, we decided to ride across the country. And there were many times at the beginning of the ride where it's like, yeah, there is a sunrise or there's a rainbow, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing, you know? And Allie's like, put down the camera. Like, put it down. Like, I want to experience this with you and only you. And it's hard because if I don't film it, it's hard to share it with you. And so I got better at that as Love Cycles went on to really kind of, honor what Allie had requested. And we did have more of those magical moments together. And then I would sneak the shots when I needed to get the shots. And that didn't have anything to do with why we broke up. People always ask, why'd you break up? Allie is still a very close friend. She will always be a very dear friend to me. You watch that whole adventure. She's an amazing human. She's one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met. She challenged me in ways that other humans have never challenged me, just like in everything. She's super smart. And so we'll always have love for each other. It just didn't work out as a romantic relationship. And it was hard. It was really hard to say goodbye to that. Because I thought she was the one. I thought we were going to get married. I really, truly did. And she felt the same way. And, you know, we did Love Cycles to see. We gave it a shot. And it didn't work out. And that's okay. And it's important also, I think, to share these stories with YouTube, because love stories don't always have a happy ending. You know, that's a very real thing. And there's a lot of criticism with Instagram and YouTube about people only show the shiny parts of their lives, the best moments. And that's why I made the video about why we broke up, you know, because you would all come on this fairy tale adventure of Ryan and Allie riding across the country, and all of a sudden she wasn't in my videos anymore. And people wanted to know why. And I tried to, you know, explain that in the most respectful way possible. And it was hard. You see that video, I'm choking up. It's like, ugh, it's heart-wrenching. But I have a friend for life, and her name is Allie. She's not my wife, and that's okay. Yeah. Here we go.
And thanks again for making all the videos, by the way.
Absolutely.
How much time does it take? You said it's a lot of work. I'm just wondering, if you did into this, how much time would you save? I'm just curious
Yeah.
about that.
Question is, how much time does it take to make these videos, right? Yeah. How much time? So it takes a long time. This is my full-time job. This is what I do. A lot of people think, oh, Ryan is a YouTuber and he must have another job. No, this is my job, and that was always the goal. I worked in the TV world for many years. My dream was to be a travel TV show host. I wanted to be like Mike Rowe, you know, the guy from Dirty Jobs, or, you know, even Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. And I was like, I can totally do this because I think I'm dynamic and fun and I can tell stories. And it didn't quite work out. I had some success in the TV world, but it was really hard to navigate. And I decided, okay, no more TV. I'm going to try to do this YouTube thing and build up my channel big enough to the point where I could make a living doing it. And the first few years were really hard. I put a ton of effort into my videos, the same amount as I put in now. And they, nobody watched them. My mom watched them, of course. She's my #1 fan. Hi, Mom. But I didn't really get many views back in the days. And it was scary. I was like, okay, I've just ditched the TV world where I did make a living. And now I'm trying this YouTube thing. And I'm 37 years old. I should be at the point in my life where I'm like making money. All my other friends are like deep into their careers, and I'm like, I'm a YouTuber and I make videos, and like nobody really understood it. But I was just relentless, and that's one of my personality traits. Like, I just don't give up, and I just kept with it. And I knew that if I kept sharing these stories, that it would make me happy. It would fulfill me, because the main goal with my channel is to put something of value into the world, to make the world a better place, going back to my message from Honduras, and that was my medium. And I just stuck with it, and the video started getting a few more views, and some friends would tell their friends, and it's caught on to a degree. My channel is bigger than I ever thought it would be, and I'm incredibly grateful. I'm at 130,000 subscribers now, which to me is huge. Woo! Yeah, thank you. It's not huge. You look at some of the other YouTubers with millions of subscribers, but it's really 130,000 people. That's a lot of people. Really, it's so many people. So it's my full-time job. I spend every day editing. When I'm not on an adventure, I'm at home editing. The editing process takes a long time because I'm shooting with 3 different cameras. I have a drone, I have a GoPro, I have my Sony. The Sony shoots all the interviews and the flower shots, the depth of field, like beauty shots. The GoPro gets all the movement shots when I'm on my bike, whether it's on my head. And the drone obviously gets the beautiful drone shots. And it takes a while to put those all together and build a story out of my footage. And then I spend a lot of time finding music. I'm part of a music library called MusicBed. And I really want the music to be good, because audio is a huge part of telling stories. And I spend lots of time just typing in like, okay, acoustic, chill music, okay, acoustic with some cello. It takes forever to find these songs, but it's worth it in the end. Do you guys like the music that I put in there? Yeah, okay, cool. Because it's not easy to find those songs. Like, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of songs that I sift through.
but how much would it add to the distance of the ride? I just.
Oh, how much time, like, on the
Yeah, because
actual,
I did a long bike ride, and I'm like, I don't know how we do this. I mean, I did this long run, you know, it takes
It's-
8 hours longer. I don't know if
it's hard to calculate how much time, you know, I spend every day filming, but it's a lot. You know, I wake up, the first thing I do is start filming, you know, I set up the shots, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours extra,
Okay.
you know, maybe, it really depends. Yeah.
How much of what you do is planned and how much is spur of the moment?
Okay. How much of what I do is planned and how much is spur of the moment? Maybe we should move this a little.
Like in a typical ride, let's take Brian through a day.
Yeah.
What does he plan on doing?
Yeah. So I don't really plan much at all, and that's kind of my MO with life in general. I just kind of go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens. And that's how it is with these bike rides too. Like, okay, I dreamed up the Colorado Trail. I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna go out there, and I'm just gonna start pedaling, and we'll see what happens. So I would say almost none of it is pre-planned as far as production goes.
You don't have like a list of shots that you're gonna.
No, I definitely don't have a list of shots. I know in my mind, I'm like, I need to get some drone shots at some point in the day. I need to get some close-ups of some beauty at some point in the day. I hopefully will meet somebody. It's not, you know, a guarantee I'm gonna meet somebody. Hopefully we'll meet some interesting people that I can film. And I go through this in my mind. I'm like, God, how long can I keep making YouTube videos of essentially doing the same exact thing over and over and over and make it interesting, right? But it always works out. Yeah.
Brian, as you're going along, are you crafting the story though in your head? You don't pre-plan, but editing is the most time-consuming part of it.
Yep.
Do you, as you go along, I mean, you probably go without a laptop or anything, are you
Yeah.
making mental notes as you go along? I'm
Yeah.
gonna use this shot, I'm gonna use that shot. This is the way I'm gonna put it together. So that when you get to the editing process, you've almost already got an outline in your head.
Yeah. The question is, do I have an outline?
Convoluted.
Yeah, an outline in my head as I'm writing. Do I kind of an idea of the narrative as I'm going along? And the answer is yes. I have gotten pretty good at knowing what I need, and I only shoot what I need at times. A lot of people think I'm just filming all day long. The GoPro just starts in the morning and ends at 5 p.m. I'm pushing pause continually throughout the day. And so yeah, I will like get the shots in the morning. Okay, I got 3 tripod shots that will be good transitions from the last scene. I would like to get a drone shot that can, you know, take the viewer and give them a perspective of what they're seeing right here. I just interviewed somebody, and now I need something to get me out of that interview and take me forward. And so those are all things that I am thinking about. But again, it's hard because it's not a guarantee I can always get those things. I have worked in the TV world where everything is scripted. And it's like, okay, we're gonna go here, you're gonna get the introduction shots, then we're gonna get some B-roll, then we're gonna move over to this section, and you know, there's a whole scripted
And
list.
what you're doing is everything is a one-man band, which is absolutely incredible. There aren't that many people in the news business that do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a one-man band to shoot, but do they go back and edit a complex piece together? And the answer is probably no.
Yeah, it's hard, but I've done it so much that I'm, you know, I like to say that, or like to feel like I'm somewhat good at it now. There are times where I'm like, man, I didn't get the shots I needed, and now I have to figure out a way to tell the story with shots that I don't have. In my most recent video that came out last week on the Colorado Trail, it's when this hail started and just everything went chaotic. I was filming and the GoPro battery died, and it was, my hands were frozen, and I just couldn't I didn't have the energy to take out another battery, put it in the GoPro, and risk getting it wet. And the other cameras were like packed away, and it was a complete downpour. I'm like, I need to be filming this, but I'm not. Like I didn't really capture that moment. And it was unfortunate. And so in that way, I had to problem solve. I'm like, okay, so I went from here where it's like the storm is starting, and then over here, there's hail all over the ground. What happened between this and this? You know, and I need to tell that story without having the shots.
Tricky.
And so I just used a couple of, you know, texts, and I was like, and then, you know, all hell broke loose, and it sucked. Yeah, it's tricky. It really is, yeah.
What bikes do you own?
What bikes do I own? I own only priority bikes. Yeah. Woo! I have the 600X, I have the 600, I have the Apollo, I have the Coast, which is the cruiser. I have the Current, which is the e-bike. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Somebody else here, you have a lot of priority bikes as well, right? How many do you have?
There is a kids bike on Gotham, on current.
So how many is that?
Yeah, two kids bikes. So.
Wow, okay. So he has as many priorities as I do. Excuse me? I do. My full suspension mountain bike is a Reed. Yeah, and that's made in Colorado, 10 miles away from my house. That is my raging trail bike, and it's super fun. Yeah.
All right, so I have many questions, but I'll have just these two. So number one, because of the current events with the infrastructure, so probably you're very influential. So imagine that you're, say, Secretary Mayor P. What do I need to do to make more environment for the bicyclists?
Okay, great question.
And then the second one is you had a campaign for kids for getting bikes recently. I just want to follow up on that also.
Okay, cool. So the question is, where did all the money go that I raised for the kids? Did I give it to the kids? We'll find it. And number two is, if I were like a mayor or somebody in charge of like infrastructure, how would I make the bike world or the United States more friendly for bikes? Is that right? Okay. So we'll start with the bicycle advocacy one. I'm a big believer that if more people are on the streets riding bikes, it's going to be safer for everybody, because cars are going to be more used to seeing bikes on the roads, like in Europe. And cars respect cyclists more. They're just used to it. It's a part of life. It's a part of the roads. In the United States, our country is built on the highway system and cars, and then the cars rule. And I would love to see more protected bike lanes. The number one reason why people don't ride bikes is because they don't feel safe. Like my mom, she's a perfect example. She doesn't get on her bike a ton because she doesn't feel safe. Even on the streets of Boulder, which is a very bike-friendly city. So I usually ride with my mom to make her feel safer. So I would love to see more protected bike lanes. I would like to see enforcement be a real thing. Distracted driving is absolutely horrible, and it's getting worse. My video last night that came out about this talks a little bit about that. You could be driving your car and Snapchatting and not paying attention to anything, and you're probably going to get away with it because how many cops are going to see you in the moment doing that? And that's a tricky one to enforce, but I think we actually need to enforce these types of laws. In New York City, I love riding my bike around here, but cars park in the bike lane constantly, and it's like, this is really dangerous, and so I don't know exactly what I would do, but I would put a lot more money into bike lanes, protected bike lanes, enforcement, and of course, free taco stands on every street corner. Right? Yeah, we need that. Question number two, what happened with the money of the fundraiser? So, a lot of you remember we auctioned off a 600X this past spring. We raised $45,000, which was absolutely amazing. Some of you may have bid on that bike or bought raffle tickets. Did anybody do that? Yeah, okay, a few people did. Sorry you didn't win. We'll do it again. We gave money to a Navajo youth bikepacking group in Arizona. And it's run by a really cool guy named John. And he started this nonprofit recently to take kids out on bikes and bikepacking trips and to help them connect back into nature. And so we gave them quite a bit of money, and they used that money to buy bikes for the kids and food and stuff for their trips. Dana is the one who helped administer a lot of this stuff. We all know Dana, yes! She's the best. And we gave a lot of money to the Blackfoot Nation up in Montana, doing similar things with bikes for those kids. She also is very connected with the Boys and Girls Club in Pueblo, Colorado, where she is from, where she was born, and gave a lot of money to those kids. Same things, bikes, bike programs. And that's essentially where all of the money went for that project. And we're going to do it again. We're going to keep on doing this and see how many more kids we can get on bikes. So as we all know, the younger we get on bikes, the more we're going to stick with it for the rest of our lives, right? It's harder, in middle age or whatever, to try something new. You're just scared and you just don't want to do it, or it's just not a part of your culture really. But if you start riding a bike as a kid, like that's part of your life. Like you love it and you're going to continue doing it. Yeah, so that's where the money went.
It's so true. The only solution is more bikes.
More bikes, yeah, more bikes.
That's it.
I'm a big believer that bikes can save the world. Bikes can solve a lot of the world's major problems. I really believe that. From oil and gas consumption to just pollution to even things we don't think about like noise pollution. Cities would be a lot quieter if everybody rode bikes instead of drove cars.
Yeah, here's what I do is sorry for hurrying.
That's okay.
I build my own bikes.
Yeah,
And so when I'm ready to build one, I fix up the old one and give it away.
very cool.
And you don't know the experience, it's quite the experience to give a kid who's never had a bike.
Yeah, what's your name again?
Oh, Mark.
Way to go, thank you. Way to go, give him a round of applause. So we have a gentleman in the audience that says that he makes bikes, and every time he makes a new bike, he gives away another bike to a child, which is so cool. Thank you for doing that. And I think that's a
But I
huge.
have a really tough question for you.
Okay, you wanna go now? Tough question? Okay.
If you had to make a choice,
Yeah.
Nutella or peanut butter?
This is a good question. The question is Nutella or peanut butter? Ah, man. Nutella is so good, but it's really like candy. It's not healthy at all in any way, shape, or form. I feel like peanut butter is somewhat healthy, especially if you buy like natural peanut butter. So if I had to choose one for the rest of my life, I'd probably choose peanut butter. Yeah. And also, I've been learning more recently about the palm oil that goes into Nutella and the deforestation that happens in Indonesia and of most products that we use in life, from shampoo to Nutella to other things, use palm oil. And I'm really trying to be mindful about choosing products that don't have palm oil. What, Nelson?
Sorry, to, expand your question, creamy, smooth, or
Nelson from Priority asked us, smooth or chunky peanut butter? Smooth all the way. Where am I smooth? What? What are you talking about? Thank you, Lauren. Smooth, it just goes so much better on bananas and apples. You like the crunch, huh? Dave, are you okay with this employee? Oh, you're a crunchy guy too? Oh, man. Okay.
Alright. We have an outfit that we can't agree on anything, but it's on everything, but it's okay.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. We're all individuals here. I respect everybody's opinion, even though it's horrible. Do we have any more questions? Here we go.
One of my favorite characters on your videos is your mom.
Okay.
Should you ever give you a hard time at any point along the way?
All the time.
Yes. So, what's your name again?
David.
Dave, that's right. Dave just asked, one of his favorite characters is my mom because she's so beautiful and he has a crush on her. And no, that's not what he said. Does she ever give me a hard time? Oh, yes. My mom is a ball buster. She has been since day one. And, it's scary for her. She, like I said at the beginning, single mom, 4 kids. We're all she has. And she's like the hero mom. She did everything. Working a full-time job, and then she went to college to get a degree so she could get a better job and provide for us. And so we are really everything to her. And she gets spooked when I go out there. And I go to places like Mexico or Cuba, knowing that there are dangers involved with bike touring, and it's a serious thing. And I try my best to ease her mind. I call her either every day or I text her just to let her know, hey mom, I'm camping, it's all good, you can go to sleep tonight, and you can rest well knowing that I'm safe. And I do that every single day on my bike trips. Yeah, and you might have noticed my mom is completely like silver gray. You wonder why? The bike trips. So she does give me a hard time, but she is, in her own special way, she is supportive. But she's not like a cheerleader. She's not like, oh, that's a great idea, Ryan, go to Baja. Never. No way. I usually have to smooth that one over. I'm like, so I'm gonna do this thing called the Baja Divide. There's gonna be like, days where it's gonna be super hot and like no access to water, but I'll be fine. It's okay, Mom. It's all good. Yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, great.
So this is from one of our virtual viewers.
Okay,
Tuning in
cool.
right now.
Virtual viewer question.
Yeah, virtual viewer. Keith Walters. is
Oh,
his name.
Keith, right on.
Yep, from upstate New York.
Yep.
He wants to know your take on pursuing your passion as a career.
Oh, cool. That's a very good question. Question is, what's my take on pursuing a passion as a career? Good question, Keith, if you're watching this or watching somewhere. So I feel like one of the luckiest guys in the world because I get to make my passion my job. I get to get paid doing what I love. But this goes a little bit back to what I was saying earlier, where it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I started with a channel with 0 subscribers and 0 following, and you'd have to start somewhere. And it's all about perseverance. And you make a video, and you think it's the most amazing thing in the world, and you're like, yes, I'm gonna be the next Casey Neistat. Boo! You upload that baby, and then like you get 17 views, and you're like, oh man, like what's going on? And like 5 of the 17 are my mom watching it 5 times. And then you make another video, and you're like, oh, this one's different, it's good. And you try to learn like what YouTube's all about. Like you make a sexy thumbnail, or you make the video shorter, and you're like, okay, I got the formula all together. And it doesn't get many more views. And you're like, wow, okay, it's kind of heartbreaking in a way. And especially, like I said, at that age, at 37, 38 years old, it's like, is this sustainable? Can I keep doing this? Can I ever make this work? Or should I go work at Taco Bell, which would probably be great because I get to be around beans all day long. But it's one of those things where it's a balance between doing what you love, working your butt off to make it happen, but also realizing that there are times when it's not going to work out, and then times when it is scary, and times that you might need to take other jobs to fill in the holes. And I've had to do that a million times with what I do just to make money. And there's a reason why I have a pretty simple life. You know, my diet's pretty basic. I don't have a car. Like I don't have a lot of expenses, so I don't need to make a ton of money. Where if I had like a wife and kids or something and I had to like provide for people, I don't know if I could pull off what I'm doing or what I did. I'm very fortunate. Another thing is I lived at my mom's house till I was 30, you know, and I lived in the basement. So I didn't have any bills. So I was able to pursue these things. Whereas if I was paying rent and had a car and all these other expenses, and it all comes out on YouTube and you guys see it happen every week. So thank you, Keith. Connor.
What about like for not thinking about the context of 7-day or longer adventures?
Yeah.
You know, like what about like what's the role of like the everyday adventure for you?
Mm-hmm. What time is it, by the way?
7:57.
Oh, 7:57? Wow, we've been doing this for a while. All right, well, let me know when you guys ever get bored of my stories. Connor asked about everyday adventures, and what was that?
Yeah, what's the role of the everyday adventure? Like,
Yeah.
get out there.
What's the role of everyday adventure? That's great. My motto in life is get out there, and it doesn't have to be giant. You know, I love just going on small trips sometimes, just in Boulder, like a little overnighter, where I ride my bike. You've probably seen the video where I ride my bike 5 miles to my mom's house and camp in her backyard and pee in her bushes. You see that one? You know, and it's really just about getting outside and connecting with people. And it doesn't have to be far away. It doesn't have to be exotic. People write me emails all the time where they're like, oh, I want to do what you do, but I could never take 3 months to ride across the country or whatever it is. And it's like, you don't have to. You can go on a small trip. Dave takes his kids on these awesome local trips in New York all the time to like Staten Island and other places that are nearby. And to those kids, Staten Island is like, you know, another world away, and it's exciting. And so that's kind of how I look at everyday adventures. And every time I jump on my bike or I'm running, it's an adventure. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. And I always feel like magic happens when you step out your door. If you're inside all day, like nothing magical is ever going to happen. But if you walk out of your door, something is going to happen. You might see a beautiful thing, a cool cloud. You know, you might meet the love of your life. You might get the best burrito ever, whatever it is. But once you leave your house and do something and just push yourself a little bit, magic happens. Because it's very easy, and it happens to me where I don't have motivation sometimes, you know? Where I'm like, I don't want to run today. Like, I'm just tired, and I come up with all these excuses, and, you know, I'll have all my running gear on, but then I'll be like, you know what, I need to dust my house really quick, you know? And I'll just, like, avoid doing things, and, oh, I just dusted my house. You know what, I should probably vacuum now. And I'll just keep on doing things that will prevent me from actually stepping outside my house. But once I do, I'm like, ah, this is amazing. Like, why did it take me so long to get here? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yep.
Okay, so you became also interested in building the 600X, right? So can you tell me a little about how that progressed, or what's the inspiration behind that?
So the question is, what was the progression of building the 600X with Eddie? That guy right there. So this is a really fantastic story. It was March 2020. Pandemic had started. All of my travels had been canceled. This was a point where I still took outside jobs away from YouTube because I needed to make a living. Everything was canceled. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with my life. And I started thinking, oh, I've always wanted to ride the Great Divide. It's one of the world's most beautiful routes. But I wanted to ride a Priority. But at the time, Priority did not have a bike that would really work for the Great Divide. And I called Dave. And I'm like, Dave, what are the chances you can make like a mountain bike, essentially? And Dave said, well, actually, our guy Eddie has already been thinking about this, and he thought the same thing, that somebody should ride this on the Great Divide, the prototype, and give us feedback. So that's how it happened. It was like magical. Look, I thought about it, and Eddie had thought about it. I didn't meet Eddie until 2 days ago. So it's not like we knew each other and we were chatting. It just kind of happened.
Chatted on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a little bit. So, we just went back and forth, and I was like, I got to build my dream bike. A lot of you watched Baja, where I rode the Trek 1120, and there were a lot of things about that bike I didn't like. So the 600X really is like the dream bike of everything the Trek 1120 didn't have. And a front suspension, which was really important to me, so you could do some technical stuff like the Colorado Trail or technical terrain. The ability to have a dropper post so you can get low and get back and not flip over your handlebars. Lots of eyelets to mount, racks and bags and all those things. Like mountain bike geometry. A lot of people think, and I've gotten a lot of comments on YouTube. They're like, well, the 600X is just the 600 with shocks. And I'm like, well, it's not at all. It's a completely different bike. The geometry is all different. Wider tires and the shocks up front and way stronger wheels and everything. And so I wanted to make a bomb-proof bike. And Eddie, he's worked in the bike industry forever, so he knows all like the details of like what needs to happen. And I just kind of would shoot ideas at him, and we'd go back and forth. And that's how we made the prototype that I rode down the Great Divide the first time. And then when I got back from that trip, I said, how about we do this and this and this and some other ideas. That's where we changed out the fork to the Ren fork. We made it so you could have wider tires on it, which was really important to me, so I could take it to a place like Baja. It can hold, with some tires, a 3-inch tire, which is really cool. And
the thing about the forks, you have to meet the people who made them.
Yes, so I met the guys who make the Ren fork in Baja on my second trip. They were sitting outside of a store, and it was my birthday that day, actually, and I rolled up, and they had recognized me from my YouTube videos and started talking, and we stayed in touch. And at that time, I was like, okay, cool, you work for a bike company. It didn't even register that I might work with them someday. And Ren has been a great partner. They're really good people. Yeah. All right, we had a question over here. Rachel.
What's the best burrito you ever had?
The best burrito I've ever had. This one was pretty good. Thanks, Connor, for catering this. I love the Mission burritos in San Francisco. I would say some of those burritos are some of the best. Of course, burritos, and they don't have burritos in Mexico, but like beans and tortillas in Mexico are absolutely amazing when they're like homemade. And you've seen in a lot of those Baja videos, those ladies that are just making flour tortillas right there in front of your face, fresh beans. Yeah, those are some of the best.
And then follow up. If you're on a bike where you have all the food that you always have, like big bars and Nutella and tortillas and beans, because that's all you need. If you had to get rid of either beans or tortillas, which one would you get rid of? You have to.
So the question is, if I had to get rid of beans or tortillas, which one would it be? Oh man, because tortillas can take peanut butter and jelly and honey. They're like, ooh, that's tough. Because just beans, that's not as good just to scoop out beans. Oh man. I would say, beans. I would keep the beans. I definitely love beans. There's a lot more protein in them, and tortillas would get old after a while. Yeah, so that's the answer to your question. Yeah, right on. Can I ask somebody else who hasn't asked a question? Have you asked one yet, or is it your wife? Sorry, you.
Yeah, she got you. Yeah. Through your channel, you have now become quite an influencer. Have you influenced your siblings in any way through doing this, and what do they think of it?
That's a really unique question that's never been asked. The question is, I've become somewhat of an influencer. Have I influenced my siblings in any way? And the short answer is not really. They're all pretty different from me. My youngest brother, Ethan, is the most game for doing adventures. An adventure I did a long time ago that's on my YouTube channel that you probably haven't seen is I rode the West Coast from Vancouver to Cabo San Lucas. My brother Ethan came with me for the first 3 weeks of that. And that was our first like brother bonding adventure that we ever did. So he's definitely the most open to the things. He's married and has 2 little kids, so he doesn't really have time. But he rides a bike. He's a mountain biker. My other brother doesn't really bike that much, and my sister definitely doesn't bike. But my sister actually, surprisingly, is like my #1 fan, even though she like can't relate to anything that I do on the channel at all. Like biking and long distance running. I mean, she's like, I just watch it because I love you. So yeah, no, it's really sweet. And I never thought that she watched my videos. It's funny, you know what? Most of my close friends do not watch my videos. They have no clue what I do. It's like all these other people that watch my videos. My friends, I guess, figure they can get the stories from me straight up. Yeah. Any other questions? Here we go.
I recently read Scott Jurek's book, Eat Run.
Yeah.
And I know you just did the Appalachian Trail with him. So
Yeah.
I was just like wondering, like, being with him, like, is he just like, just being up close with him, like, how great of endurance?
How does he smell?
Yeah.
The question is, I got to go on a run with Scott. I know Scott Jurek, and what's it like being near this legend? He's a really nice guy. He is exactly the person that you have read in the book and you've maybe seen in videos. He's a very sweet human, and that's why people love him. And he is a legend. He's amazing. We tried doing the Appalachian Trail this fall. He was going to try to go for the record again. He ran it. If you don't know who Scott Jurek is, I know because a lot of people, the bike people, like really don't like my running videos, and so they don't even like. They see running video, like they don't even watch it. So there are some running videos on my channel, and Scott was in a recent one. And he had set the record for the Appalachian Trail in 2015, running from Georgia to Maine in 45 days, an average of 50 miles a day over some of the most insane terrain in the world. And remember, just to put it in perspective, on the Colorado Trail, I was going maybe 45 miles a day on a bike. He was running 50 miles a day, which is absolutely insane. And so we tried to go back this year and reset the record. Somebody had beat his record. So he was going for 40 days, which would have been 55 miles a day. And it didn't work out. He got injured toward like the 5th or 6th day. But yeah, he's one of those guys. He's one of the most legendary ultra runners in the history of the United States. And he's won all the big races. And he's one of those guys that can just tap into somewhere, the well, and just push through just about anything. And in that video you also saw his wife and his kids, which was really fun to like get to know like Scott. That's not just runner Scott, but like dad Scott, and it's really sweet. And he's a mentor. I hope someday maybe I meet somebody, maybe I have kids. I would like to take on a lot of the traits that Scott has. He's a good guy. Yeah.
One of the videos is that your mom was kind of obsessed with watching or something.
Yeah.
My wife and I are like watching birds. This probably, you may not know anything, but I just was curious. Did you run across anyone that would be watching for birds? Because we're thinking about doing something.
Okay.
If you haven't,
Yeah, question is, if I run across anybody on my adventures who are like birders, essentially, and love watching birds. I meet a little bit of everybody. I can't specifically say that I remember meeting people out there that are birders, but they're definitely, in Colorado, there's always people hiking the trails with binoculars and checking that kind of stuff out. And when you're on a bike, it's a great opportunity to like see these types of things because you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you're not loud. There's not like cars and traffic spooking birds away, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Sorry it's not a very exciting answer.
I knew it was off topic. I just thought I'd ask.
Okay, here we go.
So you've been on a lot of trails over the years, and if someone who's kind of done the local stuff, what would be maybe your first choice of like an entry-level long-form trail, whether it's a month or longer trip? What would you recommend? Like kind of taking that next step and going from a weekend to longer than that?
Okay. The question is, what would I recommend as far as if you've done some short trips and now you want to jump to a bigger trip? What would I recommend? Is that correct? The Great Divide is a really doable route, and it's long. It's 2,700 miles, and it seems super intimidating, but it's very rideable. It's nowhere near as hard as the Colorado Trail. You could ride it on a gravel bike. You don't need a mountain bike, and there's towns every 50 miles, pretty much the whole way. So you don't need to carry a ton of stuff. You can resupply easily. So I would really say the Great Divide, if you want to do something big, or not even the whole thing, but just, you know, maybe 1,000 miles of it, or just one state. People ask me about my favorite section of the Great Divide. It's Montana. You can do 700 amazing miles in Montana. That would be really mind-blowing. So that one's a good one for sure if you want to take the next step. I would never recommend anybody to go from like a weekend trip to Baja. That will just blow your brains away. You're like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Same with the Colorado Trail. What other one? I mean, maybe like just a regular road tour that's not a trail. And you'll see in a lot of my videos recently, I haven't done a lot of road touring lately because I'm spooked by cars, you know, and although there's a lot of great roads to ride in this country, and I will do some more adventures in the future, I've just been more into the dirt stuff lately because it's just safer. You're never gonna get, the Colorado Trail might be hard, but you're never gonna get hit by a car, which is great.
I'd add, if I could, in addition to your answer, add great rails and trails like the Gaps, you know, the Katy Trail, Missouri. Oh, like just there's so many beautiful short rails and trails that are like off roads, beautiful hostels, resort. It's like
The Empire State Trail here in New York.
Empire State Trail here is awesome. Yeah, you know, I guess I did a lot of it with Allie, doing the whole Erie Canal and then down from Albany through New Paltz and all that. I would love to.
They've filled in the gaps and it's now contiguous.
Yeah, the Empire, and it's 700 miles total, right?
Yeah, you go to Montreal.
All to Montreal almost. Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. And you know, I get a lot of emails about like, I'm intimidated. I love what you do. I love watching your videos. I want to try this, but it scares me. I don't think I can do it. Physically, it's so hard. And really, what I always tell people is like, just go your own pace. Like, you don't have to race it. You don't have to like hammer out huge miles. Go and just enjoy it and have fun and go 10 or 20 miles a day and stay in a bed and breakfast. Maybe you don't like camping. And there's a lot of ways to do bike touring. There's no right way. It doesn't have to be hardcore. You know, my adventures this summer have been a little bit more hardcore than normal, but that's just the kind of the way it's worked. I didn't intend for the New Mexico section of the Great Divide to be as hard as it was, but there was just snow everywhere and wind and other things that made it very difficult. Yeah.
Do you have a wish list?
Do I have a wish list?
That you want to ride?
A wish list of trails? Oh yeah, there's so much I want to do. I'd love to ride around Iceland. Hopefully next summer I can finally get to Great Britain and ride the Land's End to John O'Groats, which is essentially the length of Great Britain. I'd love to ride the length of Sweden, from the very bottom of Sweden to the top of Sweden. I was an exchange student in Sweden, so my heart is in Sweden for sure. There's the Natchez Trace down in Tennessee that goes from Nashville to Natchez, Mississippi. It's like 500 miles scenic byway. There's the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina that's supposed to be amazing. I mean, I go to bikepacking.com all the time, and just like dream about all the routes that they have there. And they have so much cool stuff. So yeah, there's a never-ending, well of fun things to do on bike. Yeah. Yep. Here we go, Sal.
How important is it for you to know the language of where you're touring? Like, when you consider touring in Asia?
Yeah. How important is it to know the language of where I'm touring? It makes a huge difference if you can speak the language. And that's one of the reasons why I love touring in Mexico. Bye guys, see you later. It's okay. I'm just kidding. Thanks for coming. Take a burrito. So that's why I tour a lot in Mexico, because it makes a huge difference when you can speak to the locals. Not only for just logistical reasons, but because it just makes it a more rich experience when you can actually interact with people. If I was touring in Asia, I try to learn some words here and there, but obviously I don't speak any Asian languages except for a little bit of Japanese. Arigato. I've spent some time in France, and even France is like such a beautiful country, but I don't speak any of the language. It's frustrating. You walk into a boulangerie, and you're like, I wish I could talk to you, but I can't, But if I could have one superpower in this world, a lot of people are like, I wish I could fly, or I wish I could, was super strong or whatever. I wish I could just know all the languages on the planet and plot me anywhere in the world and just be able to speak fluently. I think that'd be the coolest, super skill out there. Superpower, right? That'd be neat. Even middle of the Amazon, and just boop, be able to speak with them. Yeah. Cool. So I have some things that I want to give away. So are there any more questions before we get to that? Any other burning questions?
What's your blood pressure?
What's my blood pressure? I don't know. It's so after I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, I was on medication that I took every single day until I was about 26 years old, and I would go to the doctor a lot, and they would monitor it because it was very high. And they said we don't know what's causing it, which might mean that he might someday grow out of it. And that's kind of what I'm hoping what happened. When I was 26, I went off the medication and my blood pressure essentially stabilized. So right now it's a lot better. It's like 120 over 90-ish, which is pretty normal now, sometimes 130. Right now in this moment, my blood pressure is sky high because I got to meet all of you. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's do some giveaways. What do you say?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so I bought some socks from Colorado with bikes on them. With the Colorado flag, I brought some for all the employees here at Priority Bikes. And I also, these are really cool Priority t-shirts. Okay, so I have trivia. And whoever answers first, I'm just gonna throw it at you. Okay, I think it's still going. Hi guys. Let's see, what can I ask about John and Mira? How long, does anybody follow John and Mira on Instagram? Okay, Rachel does. John and Mira are about to set off on what? A world tour! All the way around the world. Here you go, Rachel, these are for you. Woo! They are gonna ride their bikes for the next 4 years, all the way around the world.
Are you the reason he has a gearbox now?
Why the reason he has a gearbox? Yes. But he has a Gates belt drive? Yes, absolutely. Yes, I convinced him. So as you all know, John and Mira have become very dear friends. They have just left today from Canmore heading down south. And I will meet them at some point in the next month or so. Hopefully in Utah or Arizona. And we're gonna ride together for a little bit. I am not gonna spend 4 years riding around the world, but I will meet them from time to time as they travel, which is going to be really exciting. And they are as wonderful as you see in those videos. Mira every day wakes up. I'm like the mischievous uncle that lets her get away with everything. And John's like the dad that's like kind of strict. And every morning she will wake up and run from his tent over to my tent, start batting at my tent, and be like, throw me a stick, throw me a stick. And she's exactly like that in the videos. It's not like I'm staging anything. And I always feed her, I sneak her food and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I love that dog with all of my heart. And up until meeting Mira, I liked animals, I like dogs, but Mira really is the reason why I have really fallen in love with dogs. She introduced me to a whole new level of love. Does anybody here have dogs? Probably some of you. Yeah, it's like. Yeah, excuse me?
Are you going to get one now?
Am I going to get a dog? That's a big question. Not right now.
Okay.
I will at some point for sure. Or I'm just going to steal Mira. Sorry, John, if you're watching.
Just going to get the priority basket on the back of the bike.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And so actually, John is also going to ride across Antarctica, which is crazy. And if you've watched some of his other videos, he's a pretty established mountaineer, climber, guide guy. So this is kind of up his alley. But he will not take Mira across Antarctica. And so he has to give Mira to somebody for a little bit. So I'm hoping that I get Mira. Yeah. All right. So I only have one pair of socks left. What should this question be?
All right, I know a great New York trivia question.
Oh, okay.
Because my friend watched your video and commented, what's Allie's hometown?
Oh, that is a good. New Paltz. Yes, here you go. New Paltz. Thank you, Rachel. Right on. Okay, and now we're going to give away these bikes. Mira, are there any more questions before we finish? I have a closing statement.
Whatever happened to your friend Paul?
My friend Paul. He's still one of my best friends. He's Paul, if you remember at the very beginning of the presentation, he was the troublemaker that took me on the long ride and pissed my mom off. He's still a cyclist. We go mountain biking all the time. He's a really tall guy. If you follow my Instagram, you might see him sometimes. We go mountain biking together. He doesn't really do the bike packing thing, but we definitely mountain bike quite a bit.
Does your mom like it better now?
A little bit. Because she still knows when I hang out with Paul, like we get a little rowdy, you know? And everybody has that rowdy friend that's like pushing the limits quite a bit. That's Paul for me. But it's a good thing. You know, it absolutely is a good thing. All right, so I really want to thank you all for being here tonight. Just really looking at you all right here in your eyes and seeing your faces means the world to me. You know, I made this channel to connect with people and to tell stories and to hopefully inspire people. And, you know, some of you have told me already tonight that my videos have inspired you. And there's no other thing in the world I love more than hearing these stories. And this is my emotional paycheck right here. I came all the way from Colorado, essentially for this event, to meet you. And you came from far away. You came from Washington, D.C. That's amazing. And I never thought this would happen. It's a dream come true. So thank you all so much for being here, for watching my videos, for being my patrons. And stay tuned. There's going to be a whole lot more. And let's hug it out. Let's have a big hug. Thank you all so much. Oh, right in the middle. Oh, okay, yeah. Right in the middle. All right, cool. We're gonna do a group photo.
Kind of getting tight.
Ta-da! Yeah. You know what? We've gotten a little loose, haven't we?
Yeah, if you're comfortable with it, maybe a little bit. Yeah, we're good. Actually, I got everyone. Yep.
Put the wide angle on.
There we go. All right. 1, 2.
Beans!
Yeah.
Frijoles!
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great job, everyone.
Cool, thank you. I also want to thank Priority Bicycles for hosting this event, for being a supporter, for being so awesome. Connor, Dave, Greg, Lauren. You know, I don't just ride their bikes because they're paying me a ton of money. I ride their bikes because their bikes are amazing and they're my friends. So thank you so much.
We're so honored to have you in our lives as a friend and as someone that rides and tests our bikes and beats the living you know what out of them. And we're just so grateful to have your videos to inspire us.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for this whole crew for being here. We're just honored that everyone came from near and far.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to turn it off right now. We'll see you down the road, my friends. Goodbye.